vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publisher. For more information, just visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Now, welcome to you, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We now present a reading of articles and features from our USA Today for Tuesday, June the 23rd of 2026. And your readers today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
And I'm going to start you right out on our front page. First up, I have nation's grandparent economy is booming. Millions quietly fill the gap in offspring's childcare. Cassia Gay, who's 69, always thought her retirement would include a trailer home and cross-country adventures with her husband of more than 30 years. But that dream died with her divorce, and now she spends her days picking up her grandkids from school and doing laundry for her son. She's constantly at softball practice, swim meets, award ceremonies, and she says her grandkids typically spend one night a weekend with her and get upset when she leaves. I've been told that I'm the ultimate grandma because, whenever they need me, all they have to do is call. She lives in Southern California, but I wouldn't give up my grandkids for the world. Now, she's one of millions of grandparents providing free childcare for their adult children. New data from an AARP survey found that among the 65 million grandparents in the U.S., 15% care for their grandkids daily or almost daily. On average, grandparents spend more than 500 hours a year. That's the equivalent of 12 and a half weeks of full-time work, providing care for their grandkids. Now, the AARP survey of 3,300 grandparents also found that they spent an average of $2,654 on their grandkids last year. Now, that included $700 on gifts, celebrations, and treats, and nearly $400 on basic needs. America runs on grandparents, says Deborah Whitman, Executive VP and Chief Public Policy Officer for AARP. They are really an economic backbone of our country, and I don't think many people appreciate that. I think because childcare is so expensive and getting a home now, the cost of living for young families is so demanding that more and more grandparents will be and need to be involved, she said. I feel fortunate that I am able to provide whatever kind of support I can. Now, most grandparents enjoy caring for their grandkids, but for some it comes at a cost. The survey had found at least 11% of grandparents say they feel taken for granted, and 13% feel physically taxed about the care they provide. Grandparents want to spend time with their grandkids, but it's a lot to be a full-time caregiver or stepping in and helping out with the bills when you might be struggling yourself, she said, added that many grandparents are retired on fixed incomes. But still, she says, she loves her grandchildren, and she wouldn't have it any other way. She just loves the time they spend together. Now, similarly, Griesing said she likes being a grandma more than anything in the world. It's not that I'm not tired sometimes because the little ones run around and they need a lot of attention, but I never feel like it's a burden.
Birthday jitters? Americans are less than happy ahead of the 250th anniversary. This is a column by Susan Page. America is not in a party mood. Even as the United States approaches the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, the celebration of the founding of the world's oldest modern constitutional democracy, most Americans are mired in dissatisfaction with the nation's present and pessimism about its future. But by double digits in recent polls, they predict the country's best years are behind us, with more peril than promise ahead. Despite a few glimmers of good feeling, today's fierce political divisions have redefined a milestone that has often been marked by unity and optimism, at least for a moment. A half dozen recent national surveys have posed different questions, but consistently shown an anxious nation eyeing what will follow. That's not entirely new. In the past, the big anniversaries of the Declaration of Independence have been marked not only by celebration, but also by protest and unease. In 1876, at the centennial, the United States was still recovering from a devastating civil war. At the official celebration at Independence Hall in Philadelphia, suffragist Susan B. Anthony marched on stage uninvited to present demands for women's rights to the gathered dignitaries. In 1976, the bicentennial followed the traumas of the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal that had forced President Richard Nixon's resignation. Leading the celebration was his successor, Gerald Ford, the only president who had never been elected to national office as president or vice president. Many generations of Americans always took the founding as an opportunity to agitate for more rights. This might be a time of thinking about liberty, equality, and the pursuit of happiness. But in some ways, this time is different, said Carol Faulkner. It's much more partisan. It's really much more about a divisive president than in 1876 or 1976. Today's mood is more downbeat, too. During the bicentennial in 1976, 43% of those surveyed by Roper felt optimistic about the future of the country, compared with 15% who were pessimistic. The positive outnumbering the negative by 28 percentage points. 39% were uncertain. Now, in a Emerson College poll, that same question, pessimism has jumped 26 points to 41%, while optimism has ticked down to 42%, a positive edge of just a single point. 18% were uncertain. And what would the founders think? 7 in 10 Americans said they believe the signers of the Declaration of Independence would feel more disappointment than pride about modern American democracy. The semi-quincentennial comes after 2 tumultuous decades that have upended the nation's politics and left many Americans feeling battered. The financial system melted down in 2008, and the global COVID-19 pandemic erupted in 2020. The divisive Iraq War ended in 2011, and the long Afghanistan War 10 years later ended with a chaotic withdrawal. Since his first election in 2016, Donald Trump has reshaped a more populist Republican Party with a harder edge. And Democratic socialists like New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani and New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have become more important forces than the Democratic Party. Now opponents accuse Trump of making events marking American at 250, from the UFC cage match to the Great American State Fair, more about celebrating him than the country. The signature events in Washington, D.C. on July 4th, including a supersized fireworks display, will be the most spectacular Trump rally of them all, Trump boasted on Truth Social. Though Congress created a bipartisan commission called American 250 to coordinate the anniversary celebrations, Trump has created a separate group called Freedom 250 that has taken the lead on the biggest ones.
Alan Greenspan, 1926 to 2026. Influential economist, Fed chair, he dies at age of 100. He steered the U.S. economy through times of crisis. Former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan didn't have a lifelong dream of becoming an economist. In fact, the Juilliard-trained musician stumbled upon the profession while he played in a dance band. I found that in the 20-minute breaks we'd have between sets, I start to go to the library and read books on economics. Why? I haven't a clue, he told people in November of 2001. I finally found out that I really was looking forward not to playing during the sets, but to going to the 20-minute breaks, and I said, if I'm doing this, I'm in the wrong business. And that is the best economic move judgment I have ever made, he said. Greenspan, with the influential economist who steered the U.S.'s monetary policy during his 5 terms as chairman of the Fed Reserve under 4 presidents, he died Monday, June the 22nd. He was 100. In his more than 18 years as the head of the Federal Reserve, Greenspan became one of the most revered public figures around the globe. He steered the U.S. economy through the stock market crash of 1987, the dot-com bubble burst of 2000, the terrorist attacks on September 11th of 2001, and the slowdown from 2001 to 2003. Through it all, he earned a reputation as a flexible, forward-thinking, quick-moving, and consensus-building economist. His death was announced by his wife, Andrea Mitchell, chief Washington correspondent for NBC News. Alan passed away at our home this morning at the age of 100 from complications of Parkinson's disease, he said in a statement. He was a giant of a man who helped shape the U.S. economy for decades under presidents of both parties, but was always honest in acknowledging his mistakes. Greenspan was the chairman of the Fed Reserve from 1987 to 2006, the second longest term in the central bank's history. Steering the U.S. economy through turmoil, the data addict, with a sly wit, he earned a reputation as a flexible, forward-thinking, quick-moving, and consensus-building economist. In USA Today poll right before he retired in 2006, 65% of those people surveyed said they did approve of the job Greenspan did as the chairman. He was popular across the board. A majority of Democrats and Republicans, higher income and lower income, college educated and those not, they all approved of the job he did at the Fed. Still, even Greenspan's star dimmed some. Some say Greenspan was partly to blame for the U.S. housing bubble, for leaving interest rates too low for too long earlier in the decade, and for not doing more to rein in the subprime mortgage industry. The steep drop in the housing market and the resulting downfall of the mortgage industry, that led to the credit crisis that brought the economy into recession. Then, back in October of 2008, Greenspan underwent an hours-long public flogging on Capitol Hill from lawmakers who once hung on his every word. In particular, he was criticized for not doing enough to regulate the mortgage industry as it issued loans that were likely to never be repaid. You have the authority to prevent irresponsible lending. Now our whole economy is paying the price, then Representative Henry Waxman said at the time. Greenspan said he had made a mistake in assuming that companies acting in their own self-interest would not make bad decisions. The crisis was more than anybody is capable of judging, he said. Such criticism was a sharp departure from his popularity as Fed chairman, which he established by building upon the progress of his predecessor in bringing down inflation, and perhaps his biggest legacy, that was shepherding the economy through the longest economic expansion in history. The 10-year period of prosperity, in large part, was a direct result of Greenspan's recognition that a sharper gain in productivity growth in the 90s meant the relationship between employment and inflation had eroded. It was an against-the-grain theory that allowed the Fed to keep a looser grip on the economic reins and to allow the unemployment rate to fall far below the level that had been considered a trigger for inflation. As a result, workers enjoyed a strong job market and higher standards of living. A skill with numbers. As an only child, he was born in New York City, March 6, 26, to Herbert Greenspan, a stockbroker, and Rose Goldsmith. His parents divorced when he was 4, and then he was raised by his mother, who worked in retailing. From an early age, he loved playing with numbers. His mother used to show off to relatives how he could do addition and multiplication in his head, an unlikely feat for someone who, as a boy, was more inclined to just sit in the corner. He was an avid baseball fan. He developed his own technique of keeping box scores in the 36 World Series. To this day, I can recite the lineup of Yankees starting players, complete with their positions and batting averages for that World Series, he had said. His skill with numbers, it came in handy. He did all his tax returns for his band members, and then he realized he would probably never make it as a big-time musician, so he enrolled at New York University. He earned his bachelor's degree in economics in 1948, and then his master's in 1950. His doctorate in economics came from NYU. That came later in 1977, after he had already served as the chief White House economist under President Gerald Ford. In his very first economics job, he made $45 a week as he buried himself in an analysis of obscure industrial data. Aggressive policymaker. Greenspan took office in August 11th of 87 and quickly faced the first of what turned out to be many challenges during his career. On Monday, October 19th of 87, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, it plunged 508 points, 22.6% after falling for days. Although many economists say the market was overvalued and the decline was inevitable, what triggered the crash is open to debate, and the sheer magnitude of the drop, it still puzzles economists. After canceling a speech in Texas and then heading back to Washington, the newly minted chairman, he issued a one-sentence statement before the markets opened, ensuring that the Fed would continue to keep the financial system liquid. Over the next days, the Fed pumped money into the economy at breakneck speed. By Thursday, banks were lowering their prime lending rate. The markets quickly stabilized and a major downturn in the economy was avoided. The move, it established Greenspan's reputation as an aggressive policymaker, a reputation that was reinforced by many Fed actions throughout his time at the helm of the central bank. A number of successes. Greenspan's successes likely are still what stick out in the minds of most Americans. While there are some negatives in the record, when the score is totaled all up, he has a legitimate claim to being the greatest central banker that ever lived. Here are some successes. Productivity recognition. In the late 90s, Greenspan had a hunch that productivity or worker output per hour was picking up, but it wasn't showing up in the data. Productivity is a big boost for business profitability and allows CEOs to hire more people. In 2000, the unemployment rate had dipped to 3.8%, the first time it had fallen below 4% since 1970. And also increased transparency. It may seem ironic given Greenspan's penchant for obscure language, but the chairman left a Fed that was far more open than it was when he came. And then also lowered inflation. Greenspan's predecessor, Volcker, has a place in history as the person who broke the back of inflation in the U.S. Greenspan held on to Volcker's playbook and brought inflation so low that at one point there were fears of falling prices or deflation. Non-retirement. Greenspan retired from the Fed in January of 2006, leaving at the end of the term. But he didn't sit idle. He immediately founded a Washington, D.C.-based Greenspan Associates, an economic consulting firm, and then quickly hit the speaker's circuit. His book, which he mostly wrote in longhand, that landed at #1 on USA Today's best-selling book list September 27th of 2007, and it spent 15 weeks at the top 150. Now, this is all from a guy who didn't intend to even be an economist, let alone famous. When I left the Fed, I now have the capability of becoming anonymous, he said, but I'm an economist. I love what I do. It's what I've been doing since my 20s. I've changed employers, but I've never changed what I do every day. And I have no intention of not doing that, he said.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:16. United Kingdom Prime Minister Starmer resigns amid economic woes. Britain will get its seventh leader in a decade after Prime Minister Keir Starmer resigned less than 2 years after he won a landslide election victory that promised to end his country's chaotic politics and reverse deepening public frustration with the cost of living and other economic woes. The threat to Starmer's premiership had been building for months following his bruising defeats for his party in the May local elections. On June 22nd, Starmer sent out a timetable for his departure. This is likely to usher in an orderly transfer of power this summer. His Labour Party rival Andy Burnham is the leading candidate to replace him. In a brief address outside his office, Starmer, who has struggled to deliver on campaign pledges, sharply defined his agenda, saying that he heard the answer to the question of his premiership and accepts that answer with good grace. Starmer became emotional during the end of his address, saying he would now focus on being the best husband and dad to his fantastic wife and beautiful children. British voters elect a party, not a specific leader, meaning that Starmer's centre-left Labour will stay in government until the next general election, due in 2029. Senior members of his cabinet mounted revolt against Starmer because they feared Labour could be wiped out by that vote by Nigel Farage's anti-immigration reform UK party. It has led national opinion polls for more than a year. Starmer said nominations for a new leader would open on July 9th. There could be a new British Prime Minister soon if a party gets behind a single candidate. He will remain in his post until a new Prime Minister is named following an internal party contest. Among the prospective candidates to replace Starmer are former Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner and Burnham, who, until recently the mayor of Britain's third largest city, Manchester. Burnham, who is 56 years old, was mayor of Manchester for the best part of a decade and who won plaudits for his success in attracting investment to that city and improvements to its public transportation system, for which he has earned the nickname King of the North. Burnham, if he wins, is not likely to make significant changes to Britain's domestic or international policies. He is cut from the same broad political cloth as Starmer. Though he is viewed as more left-leaning than Starmer, he served in cabinet roles under former Labour Prime Minister Gordon Brown. Burnham repeatedly has said Britain needs fundamental change and to bring down the cost of living. He has yet to make clear or outline his approach to foreign affairs or the economy. But he is viewed by Labour Party members as a more effective, optimistic, and plain-speaking communicator than Starmer, whose quiet, lawyerly manner has consistently failed to connect with the public's national mood.
U.S.-Iran talks conclude successfully. The first round ends with a roadmap to a deal. The first round of peace talks between the U.S. and Iran in Switzerland, it concluded successfully, mediators said on June 22nd, after negotiations appeared strained over the Strait of Hormuz and persisted fighting in Lebanon. The discussions were held in a positive and constructive atmosphere and yielded encouraging progress, including agreement on a roadmap toward a final deal within 60 days, the establishment of a high-level committee to provide political oversight, and the commencement of further technical talks, says Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, who attended the talks along with VP J.D. Vance, U.S. Envoy Steve Witkoff, and President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Sharif did not describe the roadmap in any further detail, though. The first round of the talks on June the 21st marked the first in-person negotiation since the two sides agreed to a memorandum of understanding last week, extending a tenuous ceasefire for at least 60 days. Now, the talks were immediately tested as Iran said it halted maritime traffic through the vital Strait of Hormuz, arguing that Israel's continued strikes targeting the Hezbollah in Lebanon that violated the ceasefire. So Trump, in response, issued several stark warnings, saying Iran must rein in Hezbollah forces in Lebanon and suggesting to Fox News that he could escalate sharply if Iran closed the strait. Vance says the strait remains open. Vance, in comments after the first round of negotiations concluded, said the Strait of Hormuz remained open despite Iran's claims that it had closed the waterway over those Israeli strikes in Lebanon, a remark that coincided with a dip in oil prices on June 22nd, as he also reported progress in the talks. The U.S. Treasury Department on June 22nd authorized the sale of Iranian oil amid these ongoing peace talks. The general license allows the production, delivery, and sale of crude oil and petrochemical and petroleum products of Iranian origin through August the 21st, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent posted on X. Now, the move, it comes on the heels of the U.S.'s dismantling of its blockade on Iran's ports and ships, which first went into effect back in April. Under that agreement, Iran will arrange for the safe passage of commercial vehicles with no charge for 60 days, only from the Persian Gulf to the Sea of Oman, and vice versa, a U.S. official said. Vance, in his remarks, emphasized that Trump had asked us to turn over a new leaf to transform our relationship with the people of Iran, they reported. De-confliction cell in Lebanon. Vance said progress has been made on reducing fighting in Lebanon, where Israeli forces have been fighting Hezbollah. A statement released by Qatar's Minister of Foreign Affairs said the parties agreed on the creation of a de-confliction cell to halt fighting in Lebanon and opened a communications line to help ensure safe passage for commercial ships through the Strait of Hormuz. The mediating parties will continue to do their utmost to ensure that the negotiations continue to be conducted in a constructive atmosphere with the aim of reaching a final deal. There are no major reports of violence by nightfall on June the 21st after 2 days of heavy Israeli strikes and exchanges of fire with Hezbollah, they reported. After the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, traffic appeared to increase in southern Lebanon as some residents then began to return to their homes. More than 1 million people have been displaced in Lebanon since Israel began its military campaign targeting Hezbollah fighters back in March.
Beleaguered reflecting pool projects problems run deep. The landmark is beset by green water and peeling paint. It's been about 2 weeks since President Donald Trump announced that work to beautify the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool was done. But since then, a saga of science, nature, and accusations of vandalism has slowly unfolded in the nation's capital. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the National Mall fixture has turned an algae green. This often happened after it's drained for maintenance, but paint has also been seen peeling off the bottom. That's unusual. Trump announced the project to transform the reflecting pool in April, saying it had been subject to complaints about leaks and lack of cleanliness. Algae at the pool has been a recurring issue for decades. The huge project sparked controversy over the cost and the choice to paint the bottom of the water feature American flag blue. The president, who has also made plans to erect a triumphal arch near the Arlington National Cemetery and demolish the White House East Wing to construct a huge ballroom, blamed vandalism for the current state of the reflecting pool and pointing to the recent etching of 8647 on the National Mall lawn. Meanwhile, a former Olympic canoeist, David Hearn, was arrested by U.S. Park Police on June 19th and charged with misdemeanor destruction of government property. The Washington Hearn told the outlet he reached into the reflecting pool, was able to grab an end of a flapping piece, but didn't remove it. USA Today has reached out to Park Police. Here's what to know about the twists and turns in the reflecting pool repainting saga from the beginning. The reflecting pool at Lincoln Memorial is one of several reflecting pools in the Washington, D.C. area. It's about 2,000 feet in length and 160 feet wide, with the Lincoln Memorial at one end and the World War II Memorial at the other. A reflection of the Washington Monument just beyond can be seen in the water's surface. The pool was built in the early 1920s. Since then, it has undergone different renovation projects and improvements according to a report from the National Park Service. It received a reinforced concrete slab foundation in 1929, and drainage trenches were installed along the elm walks next to the pool in the 1930s. And in 1981, a full renovation addressed water quality, leakage, and drainage, and self-sustaining methods to clean it were installed. But soon after, an engineering report revealed the structural system was failing. As of 1978, the pool was being cleaned twice per year, with 10 to 15 large truckloads of debris cleaned out each time. In 2010, a major project to update the pool began, lasting 2 years and costing about $34 million. Algae was an instant problem again after that renovation. Algae blooms have plagued every pool reopening since 1922, the Department of Interior previously said. Algae blooms occur naturally, and warm water and sunlight cause it to rapidly multiply. Washington saw several hot days, including some in the 90s, as the latest algae bloom began to appear, and recent rainfall may have also contributed. Nutrients that feed blooms can be blown in or carried in via particles that run off paved surfaces when it rains. Trump said that he chose the color American flag blue, a deep navy blue, to repaint the reflecting pool. The project comes ahead of the country's 250th anniversary celebration. The color, according to the Park Service, would improve the reflectivity of the water feature. The project to renovate the reflecting pool included draining, cleaning, and refinishing. Trump previously said that the pool plan was to sandblast, caulk, and resurface the pool basin. Previously, the reflecting pool's basin was an achromatic and gray concrete, which the Park Service said collected algae and turned green. Before that, the agency said the bottom of the pool was black, and at times in its history, the water has been dyed to improve reflectivity. The nonprofit Cultural Landscape Foundation filed a lawsuit on May 11th against the Department of Interior over the renovation project, claiming that it violated federal law by not undergoing the proper review process to make changes to historic places. How much did it cost and how long did it take? Trump first announced the renovations on April 23rd, calling the pool's condition terrible. In a couple of weeks, he said, we're going to have the most beautiful reflective pool between the Washington Monument and Lincoln Memorial that you've ever seen. It took more than a couple of weeks. The renovations continued through early June. Workers began refilling the reflecting pool about 2 weeks ago. The cost of the project came in at about $16 million, despite Trump initially said it should cost $1.5 million. Two companies, Atlantic Industrial Coatings and Green Water Solutions, were given contracts for the work. Atlantic Industrial Coatings was awarded $14 million to give the pool its American flag blue tint, while Green Water Solutions got $1.7 million to improve the water quality.
And the Supreme Court upholds the conviction in the Patz, P-A-T-Z, murder case. The NYC 6-year-old's death, prompted changes. The Supreme Court has ruled that a man convicted in the kidnapping and murdering of a 6-year-old in one of the most infamous cold cases in American history should not be granted a new trial. In an unsigned opinion on June 22nd, the court reversed a decision that determined the jurors who convicted Pedro Hernandez of killing Etan Patz received improper instructions. Etan vanished near his New York City home more than 4 decades ago. His body has never been found, but his disappearance that helped transform the way the country handles missing children. Hernandez, who is a former store clerk in that neighborhood, was named a suspect back in 2012. He confessed to the crime, a confession his defense team argued was false and born from mental illness. After his first murder trial ended in a hung jury, Hernandez was convicted at a second trial in 2017 and was then sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. The New York-based Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals overturned that conviction last year. The court said jurors received instructions from the trial judge that could have improperly swayed them toward convicting him. The appeals court said the judge didn't correctly tell jurors how to consider the fact that Hernandez's first confession came before he had been advised of his rights, including the right to an attorney or the right to remain silent. New York prosecutors said the appeals court was wrong to throw out the jury's verdict on such a slender reed. Retrying Hernandez, though, could be difficult because of how long ago the crime occurred and because some of the witnesses who testified at the trial have already died, prosecutors wrote. And Etan's family, they said, would have to endure yet another highly publicized recounting of the violence that was done to the 6-year-old after waiting decades for an answer to his disappearance. Amber Alerts and pictures on milk cartons. Etan's case, along with that of 6-year-old Adam Walsh, who vanished from a shopping mall in Hollywood, Florida back in '81, and whose partial remains were then found 2 weeks later, they are credited with drawing a wave of media attention to missing children and changing the way the FBI and others handle such cases. Unlike stolen cars or other objects with that had a national database, there was no crime database for children for the National Center for Missing and Exploiting Children said. There was also no Amber Alert system then. Etan was one of the first and remains one of the most notorious children featured as missing on the side of milk cartons. The containers in the 1980s, they often displayed posters with photos of missing children and a newly created hotline for sharing info about their whereabouts. The Milk Carton Kids movement, it didn't last long and it didn't lead to many success stories. But for many people, milk cartons are still linked to missing kids.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:31. We're on to the money section. Hospital health contracts are under fire. The administration targets anti-competitive deals. Americans who get health insurance through the workplace would pay less for health care if hospital anti-competitive deals with health insurers were banned. A White House report says the federal government has sued 2 major hospital systems alleging such anti-competitive deals. In separate antitrust lawsuits, the Department of Justice accused the hospital systems of New York Presbyterian and Ohio Health of using their market positions to force health insurers to forego lower-priced competitors. In a new report, White House officials detail potential savings if the federal government banned such anti-competitive contracts. Monthly premiums on workplace insurance plans would drop 6.5%, which would yield annual savings of $1,755 per family and $606 per individual. The report estimated hospital prices would fall 18% in cities affected by anti-competitive deals. Such a ban would save about $4,100 for every patient admitted to a hospital that eliminated such contracting terms. The White House's Council of Economic Advisors published the report as the Trump administration seeks to counter attacks from Democrats on health care affordability. Democrats have blamed congressional Republicans and President Donald Trump for allowing enhanced affordable care subsidies to expire this year, making ACA health insurance more expensive for some enrolled marketplace plans. More than 5 million people are expected to lose Medicaid coverage by 2034 due to work requirements and other changes to the federal state program for low-income families. But White House officials say the report reveals how the administration is handling affordability. Instead of using taxpayer dollars to fund subsidies to lower out-of-pocket costs for consumers, administration officials are targeting rising prices charged by hospitals, drug companies, and other healthcare companies. Trump has also sought to pressure pharmaceutical companies to lower prices on prescription drugs through his most favored nation deals. The Trump administration also launched Trump RX, a direct-to-consumer website that lists discounted prescription drugs. The Trump administration has not adopted a rule or backed legislation that would ban anti-competitive contracts, but officials expect the Department of Justice lawsuits against two high-profile hospital systems will command the attention of hospital industry leaders. Once people appreciate that the Department of Justice is very serious about this, we expect there will be ripple effects. The DOJ filed a proposed settlement with Ohio Health on June 16th that forbid the Ohio Health System from adopting terms with health insurers that would deter budget conscious plans. The proposed settlement is another example of how the Department of Justice is bringing down healthcare costs.
After resisting inflationary pressures, prices have risen in recent years. Buying books, it becomes costly. I already know what the price of my novel will be before it publishes next year. Long before readers decide whether they want to buy How to Kill Chupacabras, the publisher has already determined what the number on the back cover will be. For readers, that number can feel surprisingly high. Hardcovers that once seemed to hover around $20, they're now $30. I recently spent $65 on just 2 books. Special editions are even more. Now, at the same time, consumers are weighing those purchases against Netflix and Spotify and an endless supply of free content online. A recent survey from the Authors Guild found that only 36% of people who read a book or listen to an audiobook bought a copy or obtained one through a subscription. So are books actually getting more expensive? The unsatisfactory answer is yes and no. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, consumer prices have risen roughly 25% since 2020. Yet, publishing executives say book prices spent years resisting the same inflationary pressures affecting nearly every other industry. Books historically have not kept up with inflation, they said. The thing that ebooks did was they artificially pushed down the perceived value of books. The effect, it rippled through the industry. Mass market paperbacks, once a low-cost gateway into reading, largely disappeared. Paperback and hardcover prices remained relatively stagnant for years, even as production costs climbed. But readers aren't imagining the sticker shock. Daniel Green, who's a Neon Ghost author and one of YouTube's largest book creators, said the issue became impossible to ignore when friends started to turn down his recommendations. They're like, well, it's $30 for a book. I can't do that, he said. And then I saw the paperback was still going to be $23, and I was like, that's nuts. Meeting reader behavior. At Bindery Books, an influencer-driven publisher launched in 23 and built a line around online communities, they say they think about pricing differently. So we publish trade paperbacks originals. We don't have to lead with a hardcover, she said. Hardcovers, she told USA Today, remain attractive but increasingly function as premium products. Hardcovers are kind of like a prestige buy. They're like $35 a piece. Instead, they focus on lower-priced paperbacks because it's a business model and depends on getting books into many readers' hands as possible. We're just trying to reach as many people and sell as many copies of the book as we can, she said. Books as a physical expression of personality. They point to the continued growth of physical bookstores and the rise of book talk communities that have transformed novels into cultural artifacts. Books are kind of like the seed or the source code of culture, they say. For younger readers who have grown up entirely online, physical books are a rare and tangible object, disconnected from screens. Riegert sees a similar trend emerging now. The market is really sort of splitting into 2 different sides, Riegert said, where you have the luxury side and then you have the sort of the entry point side. Nevertheless, Riegert, Harvey, and Kay mentioned the current pricing structure is likely to stay in place for the foreseeable future. Green worries that rising prices and the disappearance of mass market paperbacks could create a future where fewer readers take chances on unfamiliar authors. The cheapest option for people who are struggling to buy is being replaced with an option that you don't even own, he said, talking about ebooks. You can't hand it down to your kids. As Riegert put it, even though it feels expensive to pay $24 for a new book, you're getting potentially weeks of entertainment from it.
People are using slang to insult AI, and some are concerned about the closeness to racial slurs. The term that began as a meme to poke fun at artificial intelligence is now causing a stir. Clanker, a derogatory term used to describe AI, chatbots, and robots, first gained mainstream traction in the summer of 2025. Though the term got its footing in meme culture, some are concerned about its closeness in spelling and use to other racial slurs. Galen Clements, a linguistic professor, said the term clanker sounds like an onomatopoeia for clanking metal to some. However, the word may be a micro-trigger or microaggression to others. It anthropomorphizes them, it personifies them, it gives them this two-tiered society look like we often have done with religious minorities, racial minorities, and gender minorities. We see so much of that polarity in our country right now. A term like this coming along at this time seems in a sense to fit, but it's really a negative fit at the same time. These concerns are amplified when memes parody racial tensions, said Adam Alexic, a linguist and influencer known online as Etymology Nerd. In a 2025 TikTok video with more than 1 million views, a comedian acts as a father meeting his daughter's robot boyfriend for the first time. The father initially shows concern about who the robot will be, but when he learns that the boyfriend is good-hearted Wall-E, the robot from Disney movie of the same name, he rejoices. The video's caption reads, he's the only good clanker." Though the video was made for comedic purposes, Alexic said it directly comments on the experience of bringing home a romantic partner to meet the family, who does not accept the partner because of racial or other differences. And what does clanker mean? Clanker is a derogatory term used to describe artificial intelligence, including chatbots and robots. Clanker is not the first of its kind, and it surely won't be the last. Alexis said he also heard the term wireback to describe AI and robots, in addition to phrases like gearhead and nuts and bolts. And where does clanker come from? Clanker is derived from the Star Wars franchise. Clone troopers donned this slang for other mechanical B-1 and B-2 battle droids for the noisy clanking sound they made. Specifically, clanker first appeared in the 2005 video game Star Wars Republic Commando. The term was then used in the first episode of Star Wars, The Clone Wars. In 2008, according to the Star Wars fandom site Wikipedia. Unsurprisingly, a phrase used in the Star Wars universe has transcended into reality. Many scientific and tech terms come from science fiction. The word robot, for example, comes from the 1920 science fiction play Rossum's Universal Robots, written by Czech writer Karl Čapek. Alexic explained, in the play, robots were artificially created biological beings used to do work that humans didn't want to do. And why is clanker growing in popularity? As concerns about the implications of AI grow, it is not surprisingly derogatory terms are popping up, experts said. In July of 2025, U.S. Senator Ruben Gallego used clanker in an X-post to promote a bill of his, the Keep Call Centers in America Act, which, if passed, would deter offshoring customer service jobs and require transparency for consumers interacting with AI systems. Sick of yelling representative into the phone 10 times just to talk to a human being? Gallego wrote in his post, "My new bill makes sure you don't have to talk to a clanker if you don't want to." The term's likeness to a racial slur also propelled it into the spotlight. Alexis said, "I think that to tie it to a slur is part of what made it controversial and made it able to go viral. If you think about what goes viral, there's always a sort of survivorship bias. Things that are more likely to get comments and engagement can go more viral, and stuff pertaining to controversial topics tends to see more engagement." In the Black Ladies subreddit last year, more than 135 users chimed in to discuss the term. Does clanker kind of rub anyone else the wrong way? The original Reddit user posted. And that was probably a joke in all from social media, but I can't help but feel like it's incredibly tasteless. Though some argue the term doesn't have any racial ties, others validated the poster's concern. Science fiction as a genre has historically explored social issues through technological evolution or devolution. Using robots as racial allegories is quite common in the genre. Another Reddit user commented, "It's dark humor that not everyone will feel comfortable laughing at, especially when the jokes about robots, bias, and discrimination viscerally mirror real-life traumas and discrimination that folks have experienced." Is it appropriate to say clanker? Over the past year, the term clanker has proved polarizing. Some believe the phrase is no more than a humorous jab at how users feel about the increased presence of AI in mainstream spaces, while others argue there's more beneath the surface. But whether using the term is appropriate is subjective, Alexic said. I don't think words of frustration are really ever as productive as we'd like them to be, but it's cathartic to say clanker, he said, and cathartic in a humorous way, I guess, because it's always a joke in its core. Clements said that ultimately dialogue around clanker and other such words is important. The more we talk about things, the more we know about them and understand them, we can then understand why some people are upset and some aren't, how words are used, and that's always fruitful conversation. Predicting the longevity of a new word or phrase is harder than predicting the weather. But as anti-AI rhetoric continues to grow in the United States, he expects clanker or terms like it will continue to be popular.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 12:44. Next up, I have USA Today's column about human resources from our expert, Johnny C. Taylor. Context matters when dealing with policy codes. Here's our first question. In my job, I've noticed some coworkers seem to be allowed more flexibility around policies like schedules and dress code, while those same policies are enforced more strictly with others. So how should employees approach concerns about consistency without sounding like they're accusing the leadership of favoritism? And this question came from Grace. Here's the answer. When workplace policies appear to be applied unevenly, it understandably raises questions, but appearances don't always tell the whole story. Not every exception is fully visible, and not every difference signals a problem. Context matters more than surface comparisons. Before drawing conclusions, remember that there's often more happening behind the scenes than you can see. For example, a coworker with more schedule flexibility may have a formal accommodation, a negotiated arrangement, or circumstances that aren't appropriate to share. What looks like favoritism from the outside, it isn't always what it is from the inside. Just because it wasn't announced in the company newsletter doesn't mean it wasn't handled. It just means it wasn't your business. Now, that said, the consistency is a leadership responsibility. Policies should be applied fairly and explained clearly enough that employees understand how decisions are made. Employees don't need access to every detail, but they should understand the framework behind the decisions. When they don't, it creates room for doubt. Clarity builds trust. Ambiguity erodes trust. Take dress code, for example. People bring different styles, body types, and cultural norms to their work. The goal shouldn't be uniformity. It should be appropriateness for work environment. A well-defined standard allows for individual expressionism, but still maintaining professionalism. If you genuinely believe that there is a pattern, not just a perception, raise it the right way. Ask, can you help me understand how flexibility around policies is determined? So that invites clarity without turning the conversation into an accusation. And be careful not to turn this into policing your coworkers. That's not your role, and that rarely ends well. Focus on your own performance, your own expectations, and what you need to succeed. Ultimately, fairness doesn't mean identical treatment. It means decisions are made consistently, communicated clearly, and grounded in a rationale that holds up, even if you're not entitled to every little detail.
Pizza Hut to be sold for $2.7 billion. Well, that's a lot of pizza. Yum Brands, the Louisville, Kentucky-based fast food conglomerate, has agreed to sell one of its key food chains. The Fortune 500 company is selling its Pizza Hut division, excluding mainland China, for $2.7 billion to the private equity firm Long Range Capital, according to a June 16th news release. Pizza Hut in mainland China will be acquired by Yum China Holdings, the release continued. These transactions enable Yum, that's spelled Yum with an exclamation mark, to be a more focused company that continues to leverage scale, technology, and talent to accelerate our raising the BAR priorities and deliver sustained value for our stakeholders, said CEO Chris Turner in a news release. Under Long Range and Yum China, Pizza Hut will be well positioned for future growth with ownership that brings deep expertise in the restaurant industry. Pizza Hut is one of the most iconic restaurant brands in the world, and we are proud of the important role it has played in Yum's history. Pizza Hut was built by the passion and dedication of our team members, employees, and franchisees, and we're excited for the next chapter. Under the terms of the deal, Yum Brands is selling Pizza Hut to Long Range for $1.5 billion and is selling Pizza Hut China to Yum China for $1.2 billion. The transactions were unanimously approved by Yum Brands' board of directors, the release said, and the company expects both transactions to close in the third quarter of 2026. Yum Brands expects to provide an update on the sale of Pizza Hut and its 2026 financial projections during its second quarter earnings report on July 30th. Yum Brands is known for its restaurant chains, including Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, Habit Burger and Grill, and Pizza Hut. The sale of Pizza Hut to position brand for greater success. The move comes after a November 2025 announcement by Turner. Yum Brands was initiating a review of its strategic options for its Pizza Hut brand. The Courier-Journal, part of USA Today Network, previously reported. At the time, Turner said this move was in an effort to increase value for Yum Brands while positioning Pizza Hut for greater success. Matt Morris, Yum Brands' Senior Director of Investor Relations, said during a June 16th New York Stock Exchange conference that the move gives Yum management more resources and the ability to give more attention to two of our higher growth brands. I think we landed in fantastic areas for both parts of the business, and it really allows Yum to unlock shareholder value, both what we can do with the proceeds and also the attention on KFC, Morris said. A company spokesman did not elaborate on what Yum intends to do with the proceeds from the sale. The history of Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut was founded in 1958 in Kansas and has grown into an international brand with more than 19,000 locations in over 100 countries and territories. The pizza brand was spun off from the PepsiCo Corporation in 1997, along with KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and Taco Bell, as part of a new Louisville-based company called Tricon Global Restaurants, and that was renamed Yum Brands in 2002.
And now I'm going to take you back to our front section from our next article. State lawmakers step up to tackle menopause treatment. More legislation sheds light on women's needs. Some women suffered through menopause symptoms like joint aches and brain fog for years and met with various doctors before reaching out to Elizabeth Lapre's New Orleans medical office. She often prescribed hormone replacement therapy, something not all insurance policies would cover. We are leaving so many women behind, said Lapre, who's a gynecologist and specializes in menopause. Monthly medication costs can run as high as $500. It's frustrating when a plan isn't covered. We want all women to have access to treatment, she says. Now state legislators are stepping in to help. After a conversation with Lapre, Louisiana Representative Amy Ado Freeman, a Democrat, in 2024 introduced a bill to require Medicaid and private insurance to cover perimenopause and menopause treatment. It did pass later that year, making Louisiana one of the first states to legislate menopause care. More than half of the U.S. states have introduced or passed bills or laws around menopause in the past 2 years. Last summer, in 2025, Rhode Island became the first state to mandate that companies offer accommodations for menopausal women, and Maryland soon will begin requiring private insurance companies to cover menopause care and incentivize menopause education for providers. Legislators are seeing the interest grow around menopause care, and it's now a $20 billion industry. You shouldn't have to fight your insurance company. With 1 in 10 women leaving the workforce because of menopause and an additional 1 in 5 considering retiring early, it can lead to fewer women leaders at a time when they make up fewer than a third of top jobs. There is no federal policy that protects women in menopause or perimenopause, the time leading up to it. Perimenopause can last up to 10 years and can include a fluctuation in hormones, and it presents symptoms from frozen shoulders to hot flashes. Companies need to keep women in the workforce to remain competitive, says Sarah Chivaro, CEO of Delta Dental Insurance. We spend a significant portion of our working lives navigating menopause, she says. Menopause affects both your oral and your whole body health, and in no way should be managing these symptoms impact your success at work or even your employment status, she says. Ohio Representative Ashley Bryant Bailey introduced a bill in March to improve menopause coverage. It felt like common sense as legislators discussed how to attract a strong workforce. How do we retain the workers that we have? Women are the backbone of our country, and if they're retiring early or taking less stressful jobs to shoulder these symptoms because they aren't being covered by insurance at the scale of other conditions, we need to fix it, they said. 1 in 5 women delayed or passed up menopause treatment because of financial concerns, and only 26% do have insurance coverage for hormone replacement therapy, according to a study. Menopause, it's inevitable, Bryant says, but you shouldn't have to fight your insurance company. The need for action. Philanthropist Melinda French Gates sees too many women leaving work at the prime of their career. Just when the woman's about to step into a CFO role, or perhaps as a CEO or president role, like she has all this training and knowledge and experience, she told USA Today. I think we want to put that in the workforce, not take it out. You have to be healthy to be able to do well at your job or be at home. She called on state lawmakers to address menopause. We need action from policymakers, particularly at the state level. Advocates should press lawmakers to create new education requirements, expand insurance and Medicaid coverage for menopause treatments, and ensure that women in menopause have workplace protections the way they do like pregnancy, like the ability to take time off to seek care so they can keep doing their jobs without sacrificing their own health, she said. Legislation is passing even in states that rank near the bottom on most women's health measures. I live in a state where a raped 11-year-old has to have the baby, Louisiana's Freeman says. But we came together to pass this menopause bill. People are beginning to understand how important this coverage is. It's something that we are seeing right-leaning and progressive-leaning women alike agreeing on. They know it's inevitable that they're going to go through menopause, she said. Legislation has fallen now into a few categories: insurance coverage, education, and workplace accommodations. VoiceWolf is inspired by the pace at which states have passed menopause legislation and the potential for spurring federal laws. Now, as if on cue, Democratic U.S. Representative Valerie Fouché of North Carolina, she introduced the Menopause Education for Medical Students Act this month. It would add menopause education in medical schools to better prepare all physicians to care for women. And you're listening to a reading of articles from our USA Today for Tuesday, June the 23rd of 2026 on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return to you for more ratings just after this short break now. Your readers again today are Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's issue of USA Today. Your readers are
Jody.
and Alan Blackburn, and it's on to the sports section. Clark's Open golf win defies the haters. When Wyndham Clark first met mental coach Julie Elliott, he was skeptical that working with a coach to help him improve his thoughts would help him win tournaments. You guys all say the same things, he said when he first met. Nothing works. Clark told Elliott like never because on June 21st, Clark needed Elliott like never because on June 21st at Shinnecock Hills Golf Club for the final round of the 126 U.S. Open, he faced not only a course but a crowd that rooted openly against him. Overnight, he said, he had the craziest dream of his life. Then he woke up with a pit in his stomach and endured a nightmare as his 54-hole lead shrank to as little as one before the front nine was over. He was in danger of becoming the first 54-hole leader in U.S. Open history to blow a 6-stroke lead. On a sunny, windswept day over the Scottish links-style, mostly treeless layout with its humps and bumps and swales, Clark was the golfer that fans loved to hate. We knew it was going to come, and he strategized for the haters, said Elliott. But as she later admitted, I've seen a lot of bad behavior over the years, but never like this. Yet somehow, Clark made enough clutch putts to shoot a 3/73 and weather the storm to become the first wire-to-wire U.S. Open champion since Martin Kamer in 2014 and a 2-time winner of his national championship. Being in the arena is not for everybody. I think it shows a lot about Wyndham, how he handled not only this golf course, but I think the crowd today as well, and is a well-deserving champion, said world number 1 Scotty Scheffler, who played in the last pairing with Clark. Scheffler's putter stayed cold and he shot a final round 71 in his pursuit of completing the career Grand Slam and finished tied for 4th. Sam Burden settled for runner-up after making a valiant charge, shooting 67 for his 72-hole total of 277. What a difference a year makes for Clark, who left the U.S. Open at Oakmont in Pittsburgh, a broken man after missing the 36-hole cut and destroying a locker in the venerable clubhouse that the membership had kind enough to let him use for the week. Clark's season of turmoil was framed around 2 incidents where his childish behavior went viral. The other being when he lost control of the PGA Championship, throwing a club in anger following a wild tee shot. He snapped the club head and nearly struck a volunteer with the club. It all reached a head when shortly after apologizing for behavior at the PGA and promising he would do better, he was caught on camera doing something even more inexcusable at Oakmont. It was one of those life lessons he probably needed, but no one ever wants to look in the mirror and take responsibility for such actions. When the photo of the kicked-in locker went viral, Clark went underground. It was a really tough 2 or 3 days for me. I was in a dark place. Didn't really go outside much. At that moment, I just felt a lot of my career, world ranking, reputation, everything dwindling. That's a terrible feeling. Yeah, I would say in that moment, I definitely didn't think I'd be here this year doing this. The consequences of his actions last year are still being felt. In a letter sent to Oakmont Club membership shortly after the incident, club president said reinstatement would be contingent upon Mr. Clark fulfilling a number of specific conditions, including full repayment for damages, a meaningful contribution to a charity of the board's choosing, and the successful completion of counseling and/or anger management sessions. Clark has been criticized in some corners for not making full apologies or apologizing quickly enough. He acknowledged the social media backlash and his harm to his reputation were self-inflicted, and he attempted to make reparations. Clark described himself as fun and outgoing. I'm fierce, competitive, love the game, respect the game, and just had a bad moment. I'm just happy I'm here on the other side of things. With a new girlfriend, a new caddy, and a new swing coach, and a new putter, Clark has a new attitude. The one constant has been Elliott, who trained Clark to block out negative voices and the haters. On Saturday, she sent Clark an Instagram message posted by Sahil Bloom, an inspirational writer and creator of curiosity-inducing content, to play with the surfer mentality. When a surfer gets up on a wave, they enjoy the present moment, even though they know that the wave will eventually end. They fully enjoy this wave, the wisdom and awareness that there are always more waves coming. If you think of it as climbing Everest, sometimes you go up, sometimes you have to go back down, to go back up, he said. His game started to ascend again not only after Cherry Hills Country Club in Denver awarded Clark an honorary membership last year. Clark conducted a junior clinic for the members and hit the shots while Pat Coiner, the club's director of instruction and PGA membership, served as an MC.
May leaves Michigan to be coach of the NBA's Mavs. Dusty May is headed to the NBA. May, who led the Michigan Wolverines to the NCAA's 2025-26 basketball season national championship this past spring, will now be the next Dallas Mavericks coach, USA Today Sports has confirmed. The last coach to jump from college to NBA was John Beilein in 2019, another Michigan man. Larry Brown was the last men's basketball coach to leave for the NBA after winning a national title the season before. Per multiple reports, Michigan is working on elevating Michigan assistant Mike Boynton Jr. to the interim head coach. May and Michigan had been in talks about a new contract, but as of May 18th, the deal had not yet been signed. May confirmed with USA Today's Jordan Mendoza. May said there were minor details being adjusted between both parties, but he was committed to staying with the Wolverines. We'd like to build one of the most consistent, greatest basketball programs in the country, he said. A request for clarification on whether May had signed his contract was not immediately returned to USA Today Sports at the time that the story was published. Can Michigan basketball players enter the portal with May leaving? Yes, the NCAA rules allow for the creation of a special transfer portal window following a head coaching change. Now, at that time, players can enter the portal and potentially sign with another team. According to the NCAA on January 14th, the Division I cabinet enacted immediate rule changes for the transfer portal, including those for a team going through a coaching change. Per the NCAA, when a head coaching change occurs, a 15-day period will open 5 days after the new head coach is hired or publicly announced. If a new head coach is not announced within 30 days of a previous head coach's departure, and the 31st day after the head coach's departure is after the championship game, a 15-day window will open. The additional head coach departure window is available only after the basketball transfer window opens through January 2nd. 5 days after Michigan hires or publicly announces its hire, the 15-day transfer portal will open, allowing players to enter and potentially sign with a team. The 15-day window will open if the Wolverines are unable to make a hire within 30 days of May's departure for the NBA. Now, that is separate from the 15-day transfer window that opens the day following the championship game, which in 2026 was on April the 4th.
Select company. The 2026 top NBA pick will have a high bar to rank with these number ones. There's still debate about the number one pick in the NBA draft, which begins June 23rd. Will the Washington Wizards select A.J. Dybantsa or Darren Peterson, or maybe Cameron Boozer? The weeks since the draft lottery have not settled much, with rumors and speculations seizing control as NBA executives and agents try to shape the narrative. There's a long legacy of Hall of Famers produced from the number one spot atop the draft order, with players like Elgin Baylor in 1958, Oscar Robertson in 1960, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1969, Magic Johnson in 1979, Shaquille O'Neal in 1992, and Tim Duncan in 1997, among those who thrived under the spotlight. Recent history shows the right number one pick can change the direction of a franchise. The wrong one can set a team back for years. Cooper Flagg, the number one pick in 2025, and the reigning NBA Rookie of the Year, was a relatively slam dunk compared to the decision facing the Wizards front office this time. Here's a countdown of USA Today's sports ranking of the top number one picks since the year 2000. Number one, LeBron James in 2003 of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Had 23 season careers on 1,924 games, 27 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 7.4 assists, and 26.9 per PER. The NBA's all-time leading scorer is a no-brainer, number one choice for the best number one pick since 2000. The four-time MVP, four-time Finals MVP, and four-time NBA champion just completed his record-breaking 23rd season in the league. And still seems to have more left in the tank. He's only one season removed from earning second-team All-NBA honors with the Los Angeles Lakers as a 40-year-old. Though his initial run in Cleveland as his number one pick ended in his controversial decision to leave for Miami, James led the Cavaliers to the NBA Finals and then returned to Cleveland to win an NBA championship in 2016. He also won consecutive championships with the Heat in 2012 and 2013 and guided the Lakers to a 2020 championship. Number 2 is Dwight Howard of 2004 of the Orlando Magic. Career was 18 seasons and 1,367 games. His stats: 15.7 points, 11.8 rebounds, 1.8 blocks, 1.3 assists, and 21.3 PER. His career numbers don't do justice to his run as one of the league's most dominating players during his prime years after being picked number 1 by the Magic. The recent Hall of Fame inductee was an 8-time All-NBA selection, named Defensive Player of the Year 3 times, and led the league in rebounding 5 times, and led the NBA in blocks twice. Howard won an NBA championship as a role player with LeBron James and the Lakers in 2020 after leading Orlando past James and into the NBA Finals as a star 11 years earlier. Number 3, Anthony Davis in 2012 for the New Orleans Hornets. Career of 14 seasons and 867 games. His stats are 24.0 points, 10.7 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 2.3 blocks, and a 26.7 PER. David ranks behind Dwight Howard on this list, even though he was the NBA Finals MVP on the team Howard won a championship with, because of how Davis's tenure with the team that took him number 1 went. He had one playoff run with the New Orleans before demanding a trade to the Los Angeles Lakers. Davis nevertheless became arguably the best two-way big man of his generation, and the argument is not only due to injuries that sidelined him over the years. Davis is a 5-time All-NBA selection, a 5-time All-Defensive pick. He led the NBA in blocks 3 times. Number 4 is Kyrie Irving of 2011 and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He had a career of 15 seasons and 875 games. The stats are 23.7 points, 5.6 assists, 4.1 rebounds, 1.3 steals, and 22.2 PER. Irving was the 2012 Rookie of the Year after the Cavaliers chose him with the number 1 overall pick, and then won an NBA championship alongside LeBron James in 2016. He's a 3-time All-NBA selection and did so with 3 different teams. They made the NBA Finals with the Dallas Mavericks in 2024. Irving did not play for the Mavericks during the 25-26 season while recovering from a torn ACL. Number 5, Victor Wembanyama of 2023 in San Antonio Spurs. So far, a career of 3 seasons and 203 games with 23.4 points, 11 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 3.5 blocks, and a 25.7 PER. Wembanyama has quickly leaped in the top 5 of this list after leaving the Spurs to the NBA Finals, earning the first team All-NBA honors and winning the NBA Defensive Player of the Year during his 3rd season with the NBA. He finished 3rd in MVP voting this year and appears poised to be the best big man in the league for a generation. Number 6, Anthony Edwards of 2020 and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Career is his 6th season, 494 games, 24.6 points, 5.2 rebounds, 4.1 assists, and 18.2 PER. Edwards could be poised to climb even higher based on the potential shown during his first 6 years in the NBA. He's already a 2-time All-NBA selection. He fell just shy of the 65-game threshold to achieve a feat for the 3rd time this past season. The two-way threat averaged a career-best 28.8 points this season, while also setting career highs for field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. Number 7, Karl Anthony Towns of 2015 and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Career is 11 seasons and 789 games. Stats: 22.8 rebounds, 22.8 points, 11.1 rebounds, 3.1 assists, and a 23.6 PER. The 2016 NBA Rookie of the Year was a versatile two-way force for the Knicks as they won their first NBA championship since the 1973 this season. Towns also earned third-team All-NBA honors for the third time in his career last year. One of the best three-point shooting big men in the league history, Towns previously led the Timberwolves into a playoff series win for the first time in 20 years. Number 8, Blake Griffin of the 2009 and the Los Angeles Clippers. Career 13 season, 833 games, 19 points stats, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, and 21.0 PER. Griffin didn't play his first year in the NBA due to injury, but he won Rookie of the Year in 2011 as part of a strong run of seasons during the first portion of his career with the Lob City Clippers. Griffin was a 5-time All-NBA selection, including one nod after with the Detroit Pistons.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:15 and we're still in sports. Now I have Iran is handling adversity with class, and it might get the ultimate reward. When faced with impossible and unfair situations, may we all have the composure of Iran's World Cup team. No matter what happens the rest of this tournament, the Iranian players have given a master class in handling adversity. They have been reasoned in their complaints, all of which are deserved, and have not stooped to personal insults or histrionics, nor have they quit or self-imploded. That they are still in running for a first-ever spot in the knockout rounds, maybe even the top of the group, it's stunning. And if the soccer gods have any sense of fairness at all, they could make this happen. This situation, it hasn't been the best, but we don't want to just keep repeating that because I think everyone's aware of that. Iran team is a political pawn in the U.S. There is little argument that the Iranian regime is heinous. It has murdered its own people, supported a terrorist organization in the Middle East, and targeted Americans. It is understandable why any American administration, the current one included, has less than positive feelings about Iran's leaders. But the regime is not the one playing at the World Cup. The players have as much power against it as the person sitting in Section 108 at Sunday's game. Probably less, given other athletes have been punished, included by death, for speaking out. Yet the U.S. government, aided and abetted by FIFA, has made the Iranian team a proxy in its war with Iran. The team was forced to move its base camp from Tucson, Arizona to Tijuana, Mexico at the 11th hour. Members of the delegation, including the head of the Iranian Federation, have been denied visas. The players' families are not there. And worst of all, they're under a stricter curfew than most teenagers when they come to the U.S. for their games. They didn't arrive until late Saturday afternoon, and their coach said their flight was supposed to leave a mere 2 hours after the game against Belgium. The Iran team doesn't quit. There are many teams that would have cratered in this situation, with no one would have been surprised. How many of us would have just thrown tantrums if punished for someone else's misdoings? Yet Iran simply just played on. Belgium doesn't exactly look like the number 10 team in the world, or one that routed the U.S. men's national team 5-2 in March for that matter, but Iran held it scoreless, with its goalkeeper living up to his Wall of Persia nickname. The unity, the fighting spirit we have for each other, for our country, for the people, we try to win every game and try not to concede, and a situation like this, it can happen, they say. Iran will finish the group stage against Egypt on June the 26th in Seattle. Win that, and Team Melli would finish no worse than second in Group G. Now, in the 6 previous World Cup appearances, Iran has never made it past this group stage. Once we went into the dressing room today, we said, whatever feelings we have to take it with us tonight, he said. It's really in our control to do what we have to do, firstly for our people back home, and then for ourselves, because for some of us, we play more than 10, 12 years together. So hopefully we can make a best performance in the last game. Iran's entire performance at this World Cup, it has been admirable. We all could take a lesson from that.
And here's racing news. Last to first, Lundgaard made right moves. Arrow McLaren team principal Tony Kanaan gave Christian Lundgaard a pep talk on the starting grid for the Grand Prix at Road America. The message, don't make life harder on yourself. But the Danish driver failed to follow those instructions, and on the first lap of the race, he drove his number 7 Arrow McLaren Chevrolet into Scott Dixon's number 9 Chip Ganassi Racing Honda, causing damage to Lundgaard's car. Lundgaard dipped into the pit lane on that first lap as the number 7 needed a new front wing and tires. It was crucial for Lundgaard's pit crew to operate quickly so the car wouldn't get lapped, which it didn't. Still, it didn't seem likely or even possible that Lundgaard could make his way from last to first. But as the 55 lap race on the 4-mile road course progressed, Lundgaard's car kept gaining speed and positions. With Lundgaard having an outside chance of a win, strategist Kyle Moyer decided to gamble. While most of the race leaders made their final pit stop 3 to 4 laps before Lundgaard, a decision influenced by the IndyCar's new and cautious full course yellow procedure, Moyer kept Lundgaard on the track until lap 45, the fifth latest pit stop in the race. After a brief pit stop due to Lundgaard not needing a full tank of gas to get to the end, he exited the pit lane second behind Marcus Armstrong and ahead of David Malukas. That was when Lundgaard knew he was in the fight for the win. I think ultimately we made the right moves at the right time, Lundgaard said. Staying out on that last pit sequence is what really gained us the win. But it's also the riskiest thing we could do because we're exposing ourselves to yellow flags. That was win it or finish in the last at the time. Malukas passed Lundgaard on Lundgaard's outlap since Malukas' tires were warmer. But Lundgaard got by Malukas on lap 49, leaving only Armstrong ahead of him. Lundgaard didn't think he'd catch Armstrong, who Lundgaard felt should have won his race. But Armstrong's number 66 Honda engine began to fail on lap 52, allowing Lundgaard to pass him, whose car was completely shut down on the next lap. Lundgaard held off Malukas following the restart to get his second win of the season. Moyer, who is in his first full season as Arrow McLaren's team manager after being fired by Team Penske last May, made the call that paid dividends in the end. Made dividends in the end. One thing I've learned, he's not taking risks. I'm sure it's going to bite us someday. The more races we get until the better. He's very aggressive, knows exactly what he's doing. After the 2025 season that saw Lundgaard succeed but come up short of wins on several occasions, the 24-year-old has taken the next step, getting another victory after winning the Sanzio Grand Prix on the IMS road course in May. Up until the Sanzio Grand Prix, Pato O'Ward was the only driver to win a race for Arrow McLaren since McLaren Racing bought a stake in the team in 2020 and became a majority owner in 2021. This team has been built around O'Ward, who was the most popular driver in the series and has finished top 5 in 5 of the 6 seasons with the team. But this year, Lundgaard has outperformed his highly regarded teammate, as Lundgaard is 4th in the championship, while O'Ward is 5th, and Lundgaard is the only Arrow McLaren driver to finish on the podium this season. In his second year at Arrow McLaren, Lundgaard, who is often forgotten among talented crop of under 30 IndyCar drivers, has become a force. I think everything is going according to how I thought it would, right? Lundgaard said, first year in the team, obviously Pato is very established in there and trying to learn as much as possible together and make the package better.
ESPN host sweats the details ahead of the draft. AJ Dybantsa does not want to hear from the Boston area. He grew up in Brockton, Massachusetts. So in his head, when he imagines the moment when his name is called and he walks on the stage, he wants to hear from Brockton. So when Malika Andrews reached out to the projected number 1 pick in the NBA draft the other day, he wanted to make sure she understood the difference. He wanted to make sure she writes it down. He's from Brockton, not Boston. And she wrote it down, because she always does. Andrews is 31, is the face of ESPN's NBA coverage. She hosts NBA Today and NBA Countdown, and just wrapped up the NBA Finals on site, and in 2022 became the first woman to host the draft. So she sweats the details, like the preferred hometown of a teenager, because for 30 seconds she will decide how the biggest moment of his life will sound. Andrews just doesn't wing these seconds, she reports them. The instinct is deeply ingrained. Andrews came up from print, ran her college newspaper at the University of Portland, earned an NY Times reporting fellowship, and then covered the NBA for the Chicago Tribune. ESPN then hired her in 2018 to write. She's also the host of WNBA Countdown, and this year has added tennis to her roster. She will be hosting ESPN's Wimbledon coverage in a week. Tennis isn't her background, but she is a reporter at heart, and she likes to tell the story of the people behind the news. She knows the job of a reporter. It shapes memories. So before the draft, even during those NBA finals, she calls every prospect that she can reach, about 15 to 20 of them. She does some research, but she always makes a point to ask every single prospect the same thing. When you dreamed about the moment, what did you hear? Reporters do not owe a source input in how a story is shaped. Andrews makes an exception for input for the draft. The kids get one shot in a lifetime memory, and she wants to get that right. On the floor, she works from a binder. It's alphabetized by last name, no teleprompter, the night running live. Below the camera, her researcher, Gil, holds the lowest tech tool in the building. It's a note card clipped to what amounts to a trash picker-upper and then taps the bottom of her chair with updates. The morning of the draft, Andrews is filled with nervous excitement. The lights in the camera go on. The first name is called and that drains out. I always feel this deep calm, she says. And it's not about me. It's about these guys. The draft opens June the 23rd at Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Dabansa is expected to be among the first names Commissioner Adam Silver reads out. When the moment comes, there will be general talk. A year at BYU, top player in the country, 3 golds with the national team in the under-19s, 17 and 16s, etc. Now, meanwhile, Andrews will quickly flip the notes that she wrote while talking to him. There, she will see the thing that was most important to him. And Andrews will remember to say that he is from Brockton.
Wode's huge miss helps Yamashita win. It looked like Lottie Wode had the title in hand at the Women's Golf LPGA Classic and Meyer Classic. After a brilliantly holed bunker shot for a birdie on the 71st hole at the Classic, Wode carried a one-shot lead over Miyu Yamashita into the closing par 5 at the Blythefield Country Club near Grand Rapids, Michigan. Looking back, Wode wishes she had laid up, but she went for it on the 18th, and her third shot from the rough went a little too far past the hole. The former Florida State star needed a 2-putt to win, and instead lipped out from 3 feet, leaving everyone in shock. The closing bogey sent Wode back to the 18th tee with Yamashita, a major champion looking for her 3rd career title. It was an overtime battle between the number 7 Wode and the 8th-ranked player in the world, a 13-time winner on the JLPGA. I honestly didn't expect it to end up in a playoff, said Yamashita, who birdied the 18th in hole in regulation to get to 17 under. At 4'11", Yamashita is the shortest player on the tour, came up big, getting up and down for birdie on the first extra hole to clinch the title. Yamashita was the hottest player all day, carding a closing 8 under 64 to come from 5 back. Last year, after winning the AIG Women's British Open, Yamashita zoomed up the board from 8 strokes back in Malaysia to win in a playoff. She grew emotional on Father's Day, talking about her dad, who doubles as her instructor. This week I had a really good feeling, said the 24-year-old Yamashita. I'm really happy to win. Wei Ling Su made 3 birdies and an eagle over her last 7 holes at the Blythefield Country Club to shoot a 67 and take a share of 3rd with China's Yan Liu. Rookie Riley Smith made her first cut of the season in her 10th start, taking a share of 12th to earn $51,880. Wode, who's 22 years old, hasn't yet been a pro for a full year and already has 2 LPGA titles to her credit, a top 10 ranking and likely starring role in the 2026 Solheim Cup team in the Netherlands. I'm already having nightmares about that, joked U.S. Captain Angela Stanford, who was working in the booth for CBS.
And you're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on our Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Our time is 1:28, and I'm going to switch you over to our lifestyle section. First up, we're going to start with movies. We're going to talk about Toy Story. Ranking the Toy Story movie chest is not child's play. You've got a friend in Woody and Buzz Lightyear and Jessie and Slinky Dog and, of course, Forky. Since the original film came in 1995, the Toy Story movies have become the stalwart franchise of Disney's Pixar animation studio, entertaining generations with their tales of toy box shenanigans, but also wrecking audiences emotionally with their signature heartfelt scenes. They even spawned a movie within a movie spin-off with a Lightyear. First, the playthings of young Andy and later little Bonnie, the crew led by Cowboy Woody and spaceman Buzz have looked out for their kids as well as each other. Now, in their latest adventure, which is Toy Story 5, it's out in theaters now, those dudes plus Spitfire cowgirl Jessie face a new existential threat with the introduction of a high-tech tablet called LilyPad. So how does this compare with the other Toy Story movies? Well, we're going to Infinity and Beyond, definitively ranking all 6 of the franchise films. Now, they start with film number 6, which they picked as Lightyear, that came out in 2022. Chris Evans is a pretty good Buzz Lightyear. Socks is maybe the coolest cat robot. And kudos for that meaningful LGBTQ plus moment. The rest of this straightforward sci-fi action tale, essentially the movie Andy loves that spawned the Buzz action figure, is decently spiffy, but it's not completely worthy of the Toy Story brand. Now, the next movie they have is movie number 5. It's called Toy Story 4, and that came out in 2019. A Toy Story that deals in adventure fun debuts and happy reunions before piling on a deluge of feels. After Andy hands over his toys to young Bonnie, Woody's not as beloved as he once was. When he and Forky, a spork with a death wish, are left behind in the family RV getaway, Woody reconnects with his old love interest Bo Peep and runs afoul of a freaky doll called Gabby Gabby. Meanwhile, Buzz needs to be rescued when he gets himself stuck in a carnival prize. Then at movie number 4, they have Toy Story 3, which came out in 2010. How you feel about this one? Well, it depends on how much you prefer to be psychologically rattled to your core. Teenage Andy is getting ready for college, and his toys wind up being sent to Sunnyside Daycare, where seemingly chummy Lotso-hugging Bear runs the show. And one of Pixar's most epic heel turns, Lotso actually is a diabolical villain who runs a toy prison, essentially, and the toys' escape attempt eventually leads to Woody and his company facing their potential doom in an incinerator. Well, of course they make it out okay, but you're never the same after that. At movie number 3, they have Toy Story 5, which is the new one out now, 2026. Jessie takes the reins in this newest installment, which smartly takes the franchise into the internet era. Bonnie gets a tablet computer and it's named LilyPad, who helps connect the girl with her friends, but is a smarmy menace to our beloved Toy Story gang. At movie number 2, they have Toy Story, the original, which came out in 1995. The first movie won us over with humor, heart, and a focus on making Woody and Buzz frenemies for life. Woody is Andy's preferred toy until the kid gets this Buzz Lightyear at his 6th birthday party. So the two butt heads, and Woody knocks Buzz out the window and turns the other toys against the vintage cowboy. But these rivals get on the same page when sadistic youngster Sid toy-naps them. Buzz figures out that he's not actually a real space ranger in an emotional scene, and Woody and Buzz take flight in the adventure's rocket-powered climax. And then at movie number 1, their favorite, they have Toy Story 2, which came out in 1999. Like The Empire Strikes Back, the rare sequel that's better than the original, thanks to the debuting Jessie, lending a needed girl power spunk to the franchise, while also deepening its tear-jerking potential. When Woody is stolen by a toy collector, he finds out that he's part of a gang of toys that was based on 1950s Western puppet show and is being sold to a Tokyo toy museum. Through Stinky Pete turns out to be a ne'er-do-well, Jessie is a valuable new pal who reveals her own trauma from being donated by her kid. That sort of character depth, plus one heck of a rescue mission involving Buzz, a pizza truck, and some weird little aliens, well, that puts Toy Story 2 on a shelf just of its own.
Coben's Find You taps into a father's nightmare. The latest Harlan Coben project to hit Netflix will have you on the edge of your seat. In Netflix's new limited series, I Will Find You, which is streaming now with 8 episodes, David Burrows, played by Sam Worthington, is serving a jail sentence after he's found guilty of murdering his son, though he did not commit the crime. After receiving evidence that his son is still alive, David teams up with his ex-sister-in-law, Rachel Mills, played by Britt Lower. What ensues is a prison break and a rescue attempt that brings the page-turning Coben novel to the small screen. Yet the two characters at the center of the action have no experience with prison breaks or rescue attempts. I said to Britt early on, I didn't want the characters to be like Wonder Twins. Worthington, who's 49 jokes to USA Today alongside his co-star, I wanted a real relationship between them that felt authentic in this melodramatic world. Achieving that authenticity also meant understanding even the smallest of details, and Worthington and Lower said they didn't hold back, asking the show producers various questions during filming, such as how their characters obtained a phone, changed out the smelly clothes, or got something to eat while attempting to escape authorities. While all those answers aren't necessarily in the novel, the actor said those details helped him to bring the series to life. My character is a journalist who's usually on the other side of the notebook, and now she's all of a sudden in the story. Lower, who's 40 years old, explains they're both kind of figuring out how to be inside of his propulsive getaway mission to find this kid together. Lower adds that her portrayal of Rachel was anchored by the character's relationship with her sister and David's ex-wife, Cheryl, played by Erin Richards. I don't have a sister in real life, but I've always wanted one, and I felt so kindred with Erin, Lower said. Erin was actually pregnant while we were filming, and her character was pregnant. So with this real care of life, this is a person stewarding life right now. I think Harlan's series goes to the core of what you're willing to do to protect your family, she adds. Lower's summation of Coben's work is in line with the best-selling author's thoughts on the series. Coben, who has more than a dozen of his novels adapted to film or TV, said that as much of his personal life influenced this story. I Will Find You is set in New York and Boston. Coben was raised in New Jersey and grew up vacationing at Revere Beach in Massachusetts. Coben, who's 64 years old, also highlights the father-son's aspects of the series. In addition to Burroughs' attempt to find his son, the series explores the relationship between two other fathers, mobster Nicky Fisher, played by Clancy Brown, and prison warden Philip McKenzie, played by Peter Outerbridge, and their respective sons. It's a topic that Coben can relate to as he's the father of four. The author also acknowledges that the loss of his own father, who died from heart issues when he was 26, affects a lot of the stuff that I do, like it or not. Coben wanted to capture an American story and inspire hope. I Will Find You marks the first Coben Netflix adaptation to originate in the United States. I think this is a uniquely American story, Coben says, alongside showrunner Robert Hull, citing the prison break as one of the story's aspects that lend itself to more American. I just think that everybody is sort of captured by this whole idea of this man who starts so broken. I mean, the opening line, I'm serving the 5th year of a life sentence for murdering my own child, and spoiler alert, I didn't do it. Worthington echoes Coben, noting of the opening sequence. I think Harlan's idea was that he put the character in the worst situation you could possibly imagine, emotionally and physically. The idea is, how do you find hope? That was the drive for the novel and the story, he continues. So the glimmer of hope comes in the form of Rachel offering potential food of the kids still being alive, and the hope is what you build on as the series progresses. And by the time the ending rolls around, Coben hopes the audience will be genuinely moved by the story. I think solving the mystery doesn't mean much if you don't care about who's solving it, Hall adds. That's really what the show is about.
And Courtney punches in at Dutton Ranch. Jay Courtney might be the ultimate optimist, or perhaps downright crazy, when it comes to the future of his wildcard Dutton Ranch. Villain Rob Will Jackson and Yellowstone legend Rip Wheeler. There is serious bad blood between Rip and Rob Will, with substance-abusing, wayward scion of the Dutton rival Jackson family and Yellowstone spinoff. Rip planted his fist into Rob Will's face during their first meeting in episode 1, and things have only gotten more tense through episode 7. Still, Courtney, who's 40, is hopeful that the duo might mend their fences one day. Things are coming to a head with Rob Will and Rip, he tells USA Today, but I feel there's potential for them to join forces at a certain point. That's not a spoiler, it's just what I feel. They're both two alpha guys, Rip and Rob. There's a potential for arm wrestles and camaraderie at some point. But until then, viewers can enjoy the boiling and sometimes exploding tension between Rob Will and Rip, the new Jackson family ranch foreman. Born to a tough-as-nails single mother, Beulah Jackson, the owner of the 10-Petal Ranch, and mysteriously deceased father, Rob Will has regressed into full-on Dutton Ranch villain, even menacing his more measured adopted brother, Joaquin. You know how this show works. We need someone coming in and messing things up, says Sidney. There is an antagonistic quality to Rob Will. He's grappled with substance abuse issues, a good dose of mommy issues, and some daddies, too. Drug-raging Rob Will kills his own ranch hand in episode 1, which immediately shows the malaise behind the Texas's long-standing Jackson family family and kicks off a slow brewing series chaos. Joaquin had to clean that mess up, all the more difficult since the Jacksons don't have a Dutton train station to dispose of their bodies. Courtney has been hit by a lot of heroes. Courtney has become an experienced face target for the best Hollywood superstars. I've been hit by a lot of heroes, Courtney says of the Screen Punch. I know how to give that head snap and make them look pretty cool about it. That's what happens when you play these antagonistic, morally ambiguous characters for so long. Courtney's antagonist resume is indeed loaded, including the deranged hitman in 2012's Jack Reacher. He was punched by Tom Cruise. Sadistic Dauntless leader Eric Coulter in the Divergent franchise, and Captain Boomerang in the DC Comics' Suicide Squad movies. The Sheridan-verse bonus is that Courtney comes with his own guns and those arms. The Aussie actor has bulked up since the rising star appeared as Bruce Willis's screen son, Jack McLean, in 2013's movie A Good Day to Die Hard. Now, fun fact about the fifth and possibly last installment of the Die Hard franchise with Willis, Jack makes the vaunted final kill, the only time the original John McClane didn't have that franchise honor. The 6'1" Courtney has even muscled up even more. I grew up at a certain point. There's no skinny Jay Courtney anymore. I just tried to stay in shape, he says. With Rob Will, they were going to get what they were given when I turned up. I guess Rob Will lifts weights here and there. Rob Will's love of tank tops. You gotta put on the gun show. It doesn't hurt that Rob Will is a big fan of bicep-revealing tank top. You gotta put on a gun show at some point if you've got it, says Courtney, who has no problem getting into the mercurial character with the black fitted cowboy hat from M.L. Letty's in Fort Worth. I just pull on those boots, I stick that hat on my head, and I smoke a couple of cigarettes. He's pretty easy to find. Rob Will can be crazy charismatic, emphasis on the crazy. Even the mom Beulah believes her son might have no good in him, which is harsh. There's room for some spiritual growth in Courtney's mind. He's not going to become someone that we haven't seen already, Courtney says. But it would be a mistake to discount Rob Will for his messiness as someone who can't transform and really succeed. Courtney might be wise to seek smaller goals, such as getting Rob Will on a horse. The Taylor Sheridan modern cowboy universe reserves that honor for the good guys. Courtney loved the required Dutton Ranch cowboy camp training that raised his riding to new levels. I did this cowboy camp with these amazing Wranglers, and then Rob Will is riding in a Range Rover or a Ford truck, he says. I love riding. Hopefully we'll see some now that Rob Will is back on the ranch. That seems to be Rob Will's legacy, literally.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:42. And here's a column about books, and audiobooks in this case. Hayes strikes a vocal chord with Dungeon Crawler fans. Matt Dinneman sometimes hears a peculiar question about the audiobooks of his series Dungeon Crawler Carl. Why didn't he credit the female narrator? It's an easy answer. There isn't a female narrator. But you could be convinced otherwise, hearing the uppity British quips of Princess Donut. She and nearly all the characters in Dinneman's 8 Carl novels are voiced by Jeff Hayes, whose skill has helped catapult the near perfect audible rated series to the forefront of the lit RPG, that's the literary role-playing game subgenre. Audio greatly over-indexes in this subgenre. Audible previously told USA Today the Carl series specifically has clocked more than 140 million listening hours on the app. The audiobook is a selling point for many readers because of the range of distinct voices Hayes creates for the eclectic cast of characters. Watching Hayes perform his characters live is a masterclass in audio storytelling. To a panel of eager BookCon attendees in April, Hayes read from the newest book and flipped flawlessly from voice to voice. That's why USA Today is crowning him this year's Voice of the Summer. The audiobook narrator sure to be in everyone's headphones this year. I never ever predicted this level of success, Hayes says. This is an absurd scale that I still have trouble wrapping my mind around. I want audiobooks that I produce to be greater than the sum of its parts. And I think we definitely did that with Dungeon Crawler Carl. I feel such a kinship to the way Matt's imagination works, and I feel like I'm right there with him with every decision he's making and able to respond in the way that he's imagining in his head. The voice behind Dungeon Crawler Carl. Dinman and Hayes met at an audiobook award ceremony in Kansas City and became friends long before Dinman started writing the Carl series, the author told USA Today at BookCon. He was also a gamer his whole life, so he understands the book really well, Dinman says. He's just a super talented voice actor. He's also a professional musician, and that helps him a lot with the audiobook narration because they understand the cadence. And you know, he's crazy, so it fits well. Though Hayes was in a few high school plays, he called his formal acting training severely lacking. But a love of reading and producing led him to audiobook narration, eventually creating his company Sound Booth Theater, where he leads full-cast immersive audio books. Hayes loves classics. When he reads, he wants something heavy in wordcraft, and how to express them in the most evocative ways that really touch your soul. But when it comes to audiobooks, he wants pulpy, high-octane adventures. Lit RPG has been a great genre for exercising my versatility and developing my instrument to take on more and more unique, diverse characters, Hayes said. So when Carl landed on his doorstep, Hayes already had an entire resume full of similarly depraved and messed up books, full of very colorful characters. A compliment, he clarifies. He felt more than up for the task. Hayes ad-libs dungeon crawler characters. With more than 200 characters in the series, how does Hayes create such an immersive and memorable world for dungeon crawler Carl? He says it's all about reading between the lines and ad-libbing, but not how you'd expect. Timing and tone and that stuff. It's not explicit there on the page. Requires that I'm fully immersed in the scene myself. Requires that I feel like I'm there with the actors, and I can say, hold up, let's retake that, Hayes says. When I say ad-lib, I'm not saying I'm changing the words. What I'm saying is I'm improvising how the character would deliver the line in the moment that sparks that laughter in someone. He says actors, but what he really means is a cast of voices he's created for iconic characters including Carl, Princess Donut, and System AI. He sees himself as a director and a casting director, keeping a rotating troupe of actors based on his visualization of his characters. He starts with an actor whom he admires and thinks would do a good job if given that role. It's not an impression, it's channeling that style of performance, he says. As he gets more familiar with the voice, he's able to quickly reference that actor. Carl started as a riff on actor Patrick Warburton, but the character and the voice has evolved over so many books. He's got such a special place now in my heart and in my career, and what he represents is so big in the grand scheme of my performance that's a voice that's going to get retired once Dungeon Crawler Caller is finished, Hayes told USA Today. That's a narration voice I will never use again because I don't want other things so strongly associated with something that's so ubiquitous as Dungeon Crawler Carl anymore. It would be such a betrayal of the character. Audiobook narrators are no longer the anonymous voices behind your favorite book. Many of them are becoming celebrities and public figures in their own right. At BookCon this year, one of the hottest tickets was a seat in the Audible-sponsored panel featuring Hayes and Dinman. On one Reddit post with 141 upvotes, one Audible user laments that Hayes might have ruined the audiobooks for me. Nothing is quite as good. Jeff Hayes is the first actor that actually forced me to learn who they are because they are so damn good, another reads. That was my goal from the beginning, Hayes says. I wanted people searching my name on Audible. I wanted to impress upon people. This is a style of storytelling that if you search my name, you're going to get. He also wants to earn his royalties, he says. Unlike most narrators, Hayes and his Sound Booth Theater operate on a royalty-only basis. Most traditional audiobook narrators get paid per finished hour recording and don't receive royalties after the book comes out. With Sound Booth Theater, Hayes is piloting a new method of narration, where a voice actor also operates as director and producer. He's passionate about audio drama, which involves a full cast, sound effects, and a bigger production team. He wants to represent an audiobook as a businessman, not just a voice. If we don't take advantage of that, if we don't own our own medium, then what's going to happen is the people in suits are going to make the decisions, and audiobooks will never rise above a certain level of entertainment, Hayes says. Audiobooks are competing against all other medias. We have to remember that. Why would people listen to this audiobook when they could watch Netflix? Hayes Production adds a theatrical element to the traditional audiobook. Last year, when we recorded the crime novel The Bones at No Point by D.D. Black, he went to a small town from the book to record the ambient sound. They're also rolling out immersion tunnel versions of Dungeon Crawler Call with audio elements in the episodic format. For the repeat readers who keep Dungeon Crawler Carl on bestseller lists and Hayes' career on upswing, he wants to gift them a new special experience.
And bigger World Cup means players have more days off. Expanding the World Cup doesn't mean more games. It means more rest, too. Now, this article is coming to you from our sports section. After having a full week between the opener against Paraguay and the second game against Australia, the U.S. men's national team has 6 days before the group stage finale, June 25th, against Turkey. Now compare that with previous World Cups when there were typically 4 days between the group stage games, and there's anywhere from 3 to 6 days between the games and the knockout. At the 2022 World Cup, for example, the U.S. men's national team played every 4 days. I absolutely love it, Tyler Adams said. Your body feels it, obviously, a little bit more coming in from the end of a season and into a World Cup where there's so much emotion, so much adrenaline, all these things. So yeah, it's nice having more time off. When there were only 4 days between games, the days go so quick. The first is typically an off or a recovery day. Then you travel to the site for the next match, which usually occurs 2 days before the game. And oh yeah, training, meetings, and film review have to fit in between. That doesn't leave much time to catch your breath, let alone do anything else. But at this World Cup, nothing really has to be rushed. The USMNT doesn't have to log a lot of miles in the group stage, playing 2 of its games at the SoFi Stadium, about an hour's drive from its base camp in Irvine, California, and then the third in Seattle. Compare that with, say, England, which has its base camp in Kansas City, Missouri, and group stage games in Dallas, Boston, and New York. For teams that have to travel a lot and play in 3 different places, I think it's a good thing that they have enough time to be able to recover and take care of their body and take care of their injured, he said. Giving injured players that extra time to recover, that might be the biggest benefit of this expanded tournament. At least it's going to be for our USMNT. So, what are the players doing with all this newfound free time? Teams from other countries, well, they're taking advantage of the chance to sightsee. Harry Kane and his England teammates, Dejan Spence and Dan Burns, they went to a Kansas City Royals baseball game with manager Thomas Tuchel. Norway's Erling Haaland, he checked out Katz's Deli in New York. The USMNT is staying at a beachside resort, so the sun and the sand is always an option for them. Now, similar to in Qatar, U.S. Soccer has set up a lounge at the team hotel where players can just watch the games, play video games, or just hang out. But for many USMNT players, the days off they are a chance to spend time with their families. For players who are in Europe for the majority of the year, well, that's no small thing. Off day, I don't want to spend time with my teammates, they cackled. I don't get to see my brothers, my mom, or my dad very often, Adams has said. So it's super important to just be able to hang out with them and put the game to the side for a day. No team likes to press pause when it's winning at the World Cup, but trade-offs for these extra days, well, it makes it really worth it.
Here's the Lifeline column. They said what? The Star's best quotes. Quote, "It wasn't a popular choice. Nobody wanted You Ought to Know to be first. They were terrified of that song," said Alanis Morissette of her Grammy-winning anthem on the Talk Easy with Sam Fragoso podcast. "She didn't mind me misinterpreted or labeled angry," she added. "Everyone I knew was pissed because they were paying attention. How do you not get pissed?" It's your birthday. Who's celebrating today? Author Richard Bach turns 90. Actor Ted Shackelford is 80. Supreme Court Associate Justice Clarence Thomas is 78. Singer Glenn Danzig of the Misfits is 71. Bassist, producer, presenter Randy Jackson is 70. Actor Francis McDormand is 69. Director Josh Whedon is 62. Singer Chico DeBarge of DeBarge is 60. Actor Selma Blair is 54. Actor Joel Edgerton is 52. Singer K.T. Tunstall is 51. Singer Jason Mraz, M-R-A-Z, is 49. Rapper Memphis Bleak is 48. And actor Melissa Rauch is 46. Here's the horoscopes. Aries, having trouble getting your message across? Conversations feel slightly off in close connections. Taurus, concentration may feel impossible today. Have trouble organizing your mind so you can push forward? Narrow it down. Gemini, expressing yourself may require jumping a few self-doubt hurdles. Do you want to share but feel hesitation creep in? Cancer, blurring the lines of communication. What you feel and what you say may differ. Leo, is intuition speaking or your mind? It may be hard to tell the difference. Virgo, questioning your place in the community. The Libra moon is clashing with Mercury, may have you wondering if you belong. Libra, what you feel may clash with meeting external expectations. Tempted to tell the people what they want to hear? Scorpio, stuffing your brain with information. You may feel overwhelmed by thoughts today. Pause and give yourself rest. Sagittarius, feeling out of sync with others. Social interactions may stir up complicated feelings. Capricorn, external pressure and persistent disruptions can heighten stress levels today. Ready to snap at the next person who interrupts you? Aquarius, big dreams may crash down to earth when daily reality gets involved. What's actually doable? Ground your inspirations with practicality. And Pisces, do your feelings need an outlet? Redirect attention into something creative. Well, you've been listening to a reading of USA Today for Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026. We read USA Today weekdays at noon. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Jody
and Alan Blackburn.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which may